As we enter into this time of worship, please remember that to make a difference in someone's life, you don't have to be a brilliant, rich, beautiful, or perfect person. You just have to care. And no matter how busy a person is, if they care, they'll always find time for you. Mandy Hale. Randy will light the chalice this morning. Randy will try to light the chalice this morning. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire, number 34.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not begin the love within, the prophet's soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation inviting speakers from different religious traditions or spiritual and scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics in areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU's 7 principles. Today's service centers around the first principle. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of the Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and for others. My name is Treva Boyce, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We are glad you have joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you are a guest and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your blue hand and unmute yourself when Diane calls your name. Do we have any guests?
There are no guests today, Treva.
Okay, thank you, Diane. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, the recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider becoming a member of our community. Please contact Janet Cooper or a board member if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. Let us now recite the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button near the lower right of your participant's window. When Diane calls your name, click the unmute me button near the lower left of the participant's window and speak. Just a quick announcement from the sanctuary. Tomorrow night is our board meeting. We will be welcoming in our new board members and then bidding a fond farewell and thank you to our outgoing board members. If you are interested in attending tomorrow night, please email either myself or Andy.
Is there anyone else in the sanctuary that needs to make an announcement?
That is a negative.
Okay, Andy?
Oh, thank you, Diane. I just want to say that our Guest at Your Table collection has been coming along really well. About 10 of us have contributed, and we're already over $300, which is awesome. I hope to wrap things up by the end of the month. So any additional contributions for the Guest at Your Table program can be mailed to the UUCC address, like it says in the newsletter, and that will be collected and tallied and sent in as a congregational contribution to begin the new year. Thank you.
Susan Landau.
Hi there. Two reminders. One is if you have not sent in your pledge form, I'm still looking for those. So please send those to PO Box 64 as soon as possible so we can finalize our budget based on how much we believe will be coming in. And then secondly, a reminder, next week, please bring a candle to your Zoom service and something to light it with. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I have an announcement. Women's group will be starting the first Monday in January. If you are interested in joining, please find my email and phone number in the newsletter and give me a holler so I can make sure that you're on the list to get the invitation. That's number one. And number two, we really appreciate all those who are contributing to our wonderful fundraiser. We have lots and lots of things in our church, but could use a whole lot more to fill up that truck. So keep them coming, and thank you for your contributions. Okay, let's say Randy or Mary, one of you. Is that Mary? Unmute yourself, please.
Oh, I thought I did.
Oh.
Hi. Please join us Thursday evening at 7 p.m. for our, not a service, but it's our time of sharing our holiday potpourri. And for those of you who have agreed, volunteered to participate, would you please show up, zoom in a little bit early, and so that the rest of us in the sanctuary, the three of us there, aren't worried about having to maybe fill in for you, just so we know you're there. That would be a big appreciation. And also, since this isn't a really formal service, it's our time to get together to just share our love with one another. Please invite your friends and family. It's not just for us chickens. And Susan just, she brought she said the candle for her service, which is for a solemn occasion. But we usually do for our Christmas Eve services, when we are together, we light a candle at the end. So it might be a nice thing to do that if you would like to bring a candle with you on Thursday, so that we can sing and light the candle and sing as we leave the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Dolores, will you unmute yourself and tell us your announcement?
Yes. So last night I had the auction dinner that I purchased from Nancy Tolan, and it was great. My guests have really appreciated it. So I'd recommend buying that one next year when we do our next auction. Okay. And the other one is the Goodwill that Diane mentioned. In 2 weeks. We'll be collecting every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The next couple of weeks, you only have a 15-minute window on Saturday from 11 to 11:15. But starting in January, 2-hour window to bring your stuff in. So please do. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dolores. Lou, would you unmute yourself and tell us your announcement?
Good morning. Men's group meets tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Andy will send out the link.
Thank you, Lou. And Janet, would you please unmute yourself and tell us your announcement?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just letting everyone know that Joyce Ferrone is back. She came home several weeks ago. She's now back in the hospital. She's at French Hospital in room 107 with multiple medical issues. And she would appreciate cards, but please no calls. So thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And again, Mary, we have another announcement. Unmute yourself, please.
Got it? Okay, one thing I forgot when I was doing my little Christmas Eve service, if you were too shy to volunteer to speak, but we would love to have you still share. So if you have any photographs of something you've made, or something, a Christmas memory that you just really would like to share, something at home that you take out every year and it warms your heart, take a photograph of it on your cell phone and send it to Randy, because he's going to put together a slideshow. And so even though you're maybe shy, you can still share that evening when we're together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. What a neat idea that is. Okay, Treva, back to you.
I just have to say, Mary, you're so cute. Next week, Susan Landau and friends will present Return to Sacred, Releasing 2020. Today, being the third Sunday of the month, we welcome a witness to our virtual pulpit. A moment of witness is widely practiced in Christian and Islamic denominations as a means to bear witness or give testimony about the way a specific religious affiliation has impacted one's life. Our hope is that in their moment of witness, a congregant here can briefly share a significant experience that moved them, helping all of us to deepen our relationship with Unitarian Universalism and strengthen our ties to the community. Art Gillingham, please share with us this morning.
Good morning, and I hope I've unmuted myself. I came to UUCC with a hope of finding a place that welcomed a non-traditional approach to religion. I would probably define myself as a compassionate agnostic, but I welcome many different ideologies as long as they are sincerely held. Unitarianism promotes values through inclusiveness and respect. Moreover, the real human essential values are universally shared by many, if not all, faiths. Unitarians recognize this and acknowledge that no one belief has all the answers. And I wanted to belong to that religion. I was never a joiner per se. Joining meant losing my identity and capitulating to groupthink. Joining often meant going along with a crowd when I knew it was wrong, and I couldn't do that. I preferred being true to myself rather than conforming in order to get approval. I wondered if there was room for me in any religion. Yet part of me wanted to belong to something bigger than myself, something that promoted goodness and compassion and fairness and charity, something that involved a search for further understanding and truth. The Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria fit that bill. And so, recently divorced and retired, I came one morning to UUCC to see what it's all about. The lay-led sermon was a bit bewildering, to be honest, but it was very sincere. I looked around the room and I saw welcoming faces that I could almost feel the sense of tolerance and acceptance. It was a good day. I knew I found my place and a religion I could embrace. I felt at home, and that was my moment of witness.
Thank you, Art.
You're welcome.
Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles also embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are deeply felt in this community. The first reading this morning is an African parable. An anthropologist invited children from an African tribe to play a game. He placed a bowl filled with sweet fruit by a tree. He addressed the children, saying, "The one who gets to the tree first will be rewarded with all of these sweet fruits." When he signaled the children started the race, when he signaled the children to start the race, they locked hands together and ran toward the tree. They sat down at the tree together and shared the fruit. The astonished anthropologist asked the children why they had run together when each of them had the opportunity to have all the fruit to themselves. The children replied, "Ubuntu." Is it possible for one to be happy when everyone else is sad? Ubuntu means I exist because we exist. Let us join now in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. The second reading is from an interview with Margaret Mead. Years ago, anthropologist Margaret Mead was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected Mead to talk about fishhooks or clay pots or grinding stones, but no. Mead said that the first sign of civilization in ancient culture was a femur, a thigh bone, that had been broken and then healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt for food. You are meat for the prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. A broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken the time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts, Mead said. We are at our best when we serve others. Be civilized. The anthem today is Weave by Rosemary Crow and will be sung by Rebecca Hendricks.
Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are many textures, we are many colors, each one different from the other, but we are entwined with one another in one great tapestry. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are different instruments, playing our own melodies, each one tuning to a different key, but we are all playing in harmony, in one great symphony. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. A moment ago, we did not know our unity, only diversity. Now the love in you greets the love in me, in one great family. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love. Weave, weave, weave us together, weave us together, together in love.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was beautiful. Today's sermon is titled, Weave Us Together. We Care You, and the Caring Team, to be delivered by Rebecca Hendricks, and connects with Principle 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, Principle 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Principle 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. And Principle 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Rebecca has been a member for almost a year. She often talks and writes about growing up on Minnesota prairies and jokes that she went to school with Laura Ingalls Wilder in the 1860s. But she has often thought about the impact of growing up in small towns where many people live their entire lives and are interdependent with the same neighbors from birth to death. Rebecca?
I was a fortunate recipient of Diane DeMarco's phone call last spring, asking if I would be interested in joining an ad hoc committee, later named We Care UU. During the difficult times of COVID, it seemed to make sense to check in with UU congregants, and Janet Cooper later suggested we also use this opportunity to confirm who was on what committee and encourage people to consider membership on another committee or to join a group for the first time. We brainstormed names like Couch Caring, Pulse Keepers, Two Gathered, but Dolores Miera came up with the winner. Diane wrote up wonderful reminders for effective communication and a list of questions for gathering information. Our group spent the next several months contacting members and friends of UUCC and staying in touch as requested, updating participation lists, finding additional committee members and subcommittee members, checking in to see if folks needed help or services, and later requesting input and comments about how UU was serving the needs of their members during COVID and overall. This morning, our theme is caring, and it is a time to review the work of We Care UU and explain the newly formed caring team. We hope our efforts will be meaningful in the life of this community. Before I present the team details, I'd like to talk a bit about caring in my personal life. Ted and I lived in the Bay Area for 30 years before retiring to Cambria. In late October of this year, 3 of my dear friends from the Congregational Church of San Jose lost their mothers on the same day. All 3 moms were in their 90s and had lived full, rich lives, and each is being celebrated for being loving and caring to all around them. I've spent time recently thinking about my mother, who died much younger, over 30 years ago, and who shared her caring nature with all who knew her. This is a woman who, on her wedding day in 1950, was reminded by her loving but firm father, "Wilda, this is a special day for you, and I want you to enjoy it. But don't forget about your guests. It's our responsibility to welcome them and make sure they have a wonderful time." As she raised her 4 children and worked as a teacher, secretary, bookkeeper, and volunteer, she constantly showed how much she cared for the people in the world around her. My mom didn't sleep a great deal. She was up by 5:30, and long before we were awake, she had written a handful of cards, condolence, birthday, thinking of you, and would have whomped up a batch of cookies and baked an extra hot dish to deliver to someone at lunch. Those early morning activities were the core of her caring persona. She loved to entertain and would frequently invite all the single high school teachers over for Friday dinners, most famously the 70s fondue parties. Steak, chicken, and wieners cooking in harvest gold-colored pots of bubbling oil, chunks of bread covered in Gruyere cheese, only to be followed by forks with strawberry pound cake and angel food pieces dipped into warm, melted chocolate. Mother knew that being a young single teacher in a remote town of 2,000 was not always easy, and a social life was difficult to come by. Every Sunday, a pot roast with carrots, potatoes, and onions went in the oven before we walked to church, and Mom would scan the congregation to see who needed an invitation to dinner. Typically, the proverbial little old ladies, often long widowed, and eager to enjoy time and food with a family. Thanksgiving and Christmas always included an invitation to George Label, an affable, lifelong bachelor who enjoyed spending holidays with our family And the bonus for us was his gift of a 2-pound box of Fannie Farmer chocolate, the Minnesota equivalent of See's candy. But in addition to everyday kindnesses like these, I remember specific occasions where she went so above and beyond where others might not even have thought of traveling. When I was in junior high, a young mother died of cancer, leaving her grieving husband and 2 boys around 8 and 2. Gil, the father, could not cope on his own after the funeral, and my mother just scooped up little Cameron and brought him home for months. We loved cuddling and caring for him, and though Gil and his older son would often come over to dinner and spend weekly time with Cammie, my mom made it possible for Gil to grieve his loss, get back to work, and take care of his older son. At the time, I know I gave little thought to the magnanimous gift Mom gave to that family during an incredibly difficult time. A few years later, in a smaller, even more rural Minnesota town, our minister and his wife had a new baby boy with unrelenting colic. Knowing that Norm and Sybil were exhausted from lack of sleep and chasing a 4-year-old, Mom would bring Christopher home night after night, and she would walk the house, singing and whispering to him while we slept upstairs. Norm and Sybil were eternally grateful for this desperately needed respite care, although my mother would thank them for the gift of those nighttime hours when she could once again cradle a baby in her arms. Although my mother was desperately unhappy in this remote farming town that rarely treated outsiders kindly, she poured her energy into making life a little bit better for those around her. She had left a town in which she had a halcyon social group, church, teaching, Eastern Star, neighborhood. She had no idea how difficult it would be to create friendships and emotional connections like she had enjoyed throughout her marriage. This was a town that labeled a low-income senior retirement project as communist in the late 60s. Her first meeting of the local Eastern Star group revealed its racist inclinations, and she went home heartbroken. My dad was gone 4 evenings a week, and winter fuel costs meant bundling up in a 55 to 60-degree house in the evenings. 3 of her 4 children were struggling to adapt to school in a new environment, and she was unable to be a teacher due to an archaic district regulation about spouses working in the same school district. It would have been tempting to stay home and hide. Instead, she looked for every opportunity to enrich our lives with new people and experiences, not an easy task on the Minnesota prairie populated solely with conservative white Scandinavians descended from Northern European immigrants in the 1800s. When a Japanese teacher visited Granite Falls to observe English classes, Mom volunteered our home for his 6-week stay. Mr. Akio Ito wrote our names in Japanese, taught us to count to 10, and shared the rich history and culture of his exotic homeland. When an Indian doctor and minister from Bombay, now Mumbai, visited through the church, Mom learned how to make vegetarian meals and curried specialties. I was a pen pal with Dr. Bansali's daughter through high school, whetting my appetite for a visit to India, which I was able to make years later. During my junior year in high school, we invited an exchange student into our home. Karen from Melbourne, Australia, was a perfect fit for our family, and Mom was delighted to welcome another daughter. She and Karen just clicked. They had a mutual love of Shakespeare and the theater, reading and poetry, piano and singing. My mother didn't work outside the home that year, so she could take Karen to her outings and presentations. They stayed in close touch and visited each other until my mom died. And Karen never doubted that she had 2 moms in her life. When I headed off to college, Mom was down to 2 teenagers, a cat, a full-time job, dinners for Dad, and ongoing volunteer activities. But she wrote to my sister and me twice weekly, sharing church news, town gossip, and mundane happenings from out on the prairie. And soon after the school year started, she became aware that a German exchange student was miserable in a mismatched living situation. Mom talked with the family and the school advisor, and by the next day, Hucky was the newest member of the Hendricks family for the remainder of his year away from home. He was a sensitive, homesick, self-conscious, gay teenager who bloomed in mom's lap of love. She spent time with him, built his confidence, encouraged his writing, affirmed his sexual orientation in a community that was not open and affirming, to say the least, and created a safe haven for him at 742 3rd Street, home to a truly caring mother. During the Vietnam War, she wrote to the White House almost daily, imploring the Nixon administration to end the war and bring the troops home. We were all convinced there was a thick file someplace in J. Edgar Hoover's office labeled Wilda Mary Hendricks, Minnesota dissident. Looking back, I knew my mother was a kind, empathetic person, but I realized that if I could assign a single word to her place in this world, it would be caring, feeling or showing for, or kindness to others. I hope my efforts with We Care UU and the Caring team serve as a small offering to her amazing legacy of love. So now let's take a look. The ad hoc Caring We Care UU committee was made up of the 5 of us that you see on the screen, and Dolores Miera was later replaced by Anita Hoopscher. We developed 4 objectives for our outreach: to check in with each member or friend to see how they are doing during COVID, to offer any needed assistance or services, and we're fortunate enough to have a list of willing volunteers, to broaden the volunteer network currently responsible for the ongoing operation of our church community, and to update the list of members on all committees, subcommittees, and teams. Later in the summer, we agreed to gather comments and concerns, not only how the church was responding during COVID isolation, but anything that UCC could be doing more of, less of, or differently as we move forward. We divided the congregation and friends into 5 groups, a list of names assigned to each of us. This list has not been shared with anyone else in the congregation. We spent a great deal of time talking about how we would approach this interviewing process, including how to communicate this activity to the congregation. We asked Treva to distribute a memo to members and friends describing what would be happening. How to start a conversation so that people understood our goals and felt comfortable sharing their concerns and opinions, whether they be positive, negative, or whatever. How to ask questions without implying a right or wrong answer, and encouraging the sharing of opinions, feelings, and information. How to listen without interrupting or judging, and capturing thoughts and comments as verbatim as possible. And how to respect any input, knowing that feedback is a gift, and organizations become healthier, stronger, and more resilient when they hear what isn't working as well as what is. I've spent over 30 years conducting training sessions and making presentations. In almost every class connected to effective communication, I review and talk about giving and receiving feedback. The board is currently receiving and exploring our feedback. Lay leaders and all of you will be receiving feedback as time goes on. So here are the criteria I cover about receiving feedback: to ask for it, guide it, replace defensiveness with curiosity, and keep what is useful, discard the rest. The example I always used in my teaching was asking my manager to give me feedback on a presentation to Cupertino's supervisors. I knew if I asked Phil for feedback after the presentation was over, he would just say, "Great job, well done." If I really wanted quality feedback, I had to ask him well before the scheduled talk. And with Phil, I knew I needed to suggest areas for his feedback. "Hey, I would appreciate hearing if you think I present the budget in a logical manner. And you know, I often talk too fast, so could you notice my pace? Anything else would be great too." Then afterwards, if he tells me that I was talking at a great clip, it's important that I don't respond with, "Well, that wasn't my fault. I mean, Jim took up part of my time and the projector needed adjusting." Instead of defending, justifying, or blaming, I need to get curious. So was my speaking pace too fast the entire presentation, or just in certain places? What slide changes would you recommend to make it easier to follow? This third point has been an invaluable tool for me. It illustrates openness to feedback and usually solicits excellent information or suggestions to improve future performance. In fact, and I'm adding this just before church, Treva and I were talking, and she talked about, and she hopefully will explain them to the board and other people later, what ifs. So that idea of not getting defensive, but the curiosity can be in the form of, what if we tried this differently? What if we didn't do this any longer? It doesn't seem to be a fit. What if we tried that? And I loved that. What if is a beautiful actuality of that idea of curiosity. Then keep what is useful and discard the rest. Be sure not to discard feedback too quickly, especially if it's been hard to hear, if it's pushed those buttons. Sometimes, however, feedback needs to be heard and discarded. I well remember teaching a class in the field back in the 80s when I was a relative unknown to my US customer service population. A young man who had not wanted to attend the mandatory training, and all of my field were men, and I was the only woman they knew from Cupertino, came up to me at the end of the day and stated, "You're too short to be an effective trainer." Well, my only response was, "Thank you for your feedback, and it was good to work with you today." And then I mentally took that comment, carried it over to the door, and threw it into the wastebasket as I left the room. Looking at these criteria, the planning and advanced communication of We Care UU addressed the first two bullets, ask for it and guide it. The board will need to do likewise with the summary of comments. I like to compare receiving feedback to waking up on your birthday. You have 3 presents on the breakfast table. You open the first. It's beautiful. It's perfect, and you love it. And what do you say to the person who gave it to you? Thank you. You open the second. It's okay. Not quite what you wanted, but you might use it. And what do you say to the giver? Thank you. Then you open the third, and it's awful. You will never use it. And as soon as Aunt Tilly backs out of the driveway, you're headed to Goodwill. And what do you say to Aunt Tilly? You still say thank you. We look to the board to accept all comments, whether they are perceived as positive, negative, whatever, to be valued input to the UUCC community, knowing that any comment might be valuable in moving an organization forward. We're not looking to judge comments. All input is useful and should be considered. In fact, in my experience, the most negative or critical comments often offer the most revealing and helpful opportunities for an organization to look inward and think about self-improvement. And all of us on We Care UU were most appreciative of the time and effort of each person we interviewed. Thank you for your thoughtful sharing of comments and concerns. We know that the board and lay leaders share that also. We Care UU also differentiated between anonymity and confidentiality. Just to review, anonymity means not including names that are connected with the survey. Confidentiality is not sharing information with anyone. Each interviewer listed and submitted all comments anonymously, not including any names with the input, and so our report to the board was anonymous but not confidential. I was responsible for compiling the data and typing the report that was submitted to the board. The data lent itself to being organized into categories, which you'll see in a moment on the next slide. It is important for you to know that any individual that submitted comments in 2 or more areas would have their opinions separated into different categories. Please know that any individual should not be able to be identified based on their specific comments unless he or she chose to present identifying information. In my career in human resources, I have been responsible for a number of surveys: employee, vendor, user, many variations of the activity that asks individuals to trust an organization, to receive feedback, and to act upon it. I care greatly about the integrity of this process, making sure recipients know that the process, ground rules, and anticipated outcomes exactly what they are anytime they're asked for opinions. Fortunately, We Care UU cared about this too. Should we repeat the survey process in the future, we will make any changes to create an even more effective process. So your combined input was forwarded to the board soon after their October meeting. Your comments, concerns, and suggestions naturally fell into 5 categories, and we didn't leave any comments out. So the 5 categories are how things are going during this time of COVID, the Zoom services to which you have been so dedicated, overall input, maybe that was the miscellaneous category, the bylaw update process, and comments about our process, the We Care UU process, to gather input and suggestions. The board has been reviewing this summary and is in the process of creating a summary of action items to be communicated to the congregation. We look forward to the board's review of your comments and their list of suggestions for moving forward. After our ad hoc committee had submitted our report, we talked about continuing some of our work as a new team. We wanted to keep communicating with people, maybe send out cards, check in with members and friends we hadn't seen for a while, and to be involved in any future surveys the board might deem appropriate. We submitted a proposal to the board for a new caring team, and the board approved the proposal at their October meeting. So the caring team, as it stands now, is responsible to the Congregational Life Committee. Anita Hoopsher is our brave leader, and Sue Davis and I round out the trio. We meet as needed, and as you can see, we hope to have a minimal impact on the budget. So responsibilities are indeed to send cards to anyone in the congregation who has a care, joy, concern, loss, or other life event, to contact any members or friends who have not been attending services to make sure they're okay, so they know we're thinking of them and willing to provide services or help if needed. Provide these services as we are able to anyone requesting them, utilizing our budget, and even more, the list of wonderful members and friends that we have as volunteers. Continue to contact a number of members or friends from our COVID call list who have appreciated our regular phone calls. Assist the board to complete the interview process as needed, and implement future survey changes really based on a defined, effective process to solicit input and follow through with communication, feedback, and changes. As the caring team, we welcome your questions, suggestions, and any other input that might help weave us together in love now and in the future.
Thank you, Rebecca. The work that the community does, or that committee does, is so important to us, especially in these times of isolation and lockdown. Normally, at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow. These methods are posted in the newsletter and on the UUCC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for the many ministries among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Our thanks for all the gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Please join in singing the closing hymn, We Would Be One, number 318.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. We would be one, pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice, strive to make us free.
Let us now recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen. Rebecca?
Too often, we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around.